Good afternoon from the Water Utilization Learning Center. My name is Brian Olson. I'm out here with Mark Reiman, and we're standing out in some of that early corn we were talking in a few weeks ago when we had the freeze damage. And actually, we've got the corn here that was planted on April 11th, and then here's the corn that was planted on April 25th. And so you can see here, there's very little difference in between the corn and the growth of the corn. And so, Mark, it's pretty remarkable how this corn has recovered.
Yeah, if you remember that video earlier, the corn was really flat on the ground. In some cases, all the leaves or everything or all the material above ground was frozen. And since then, the corn has just kept growing. We had a lot of cool conditions that slowed it down right away after the freeze there in mid-May. But since then, it's really been on an upward growth curve. And kind of the unique thing I think we're seeing is that early planted corn suffered a lot more from the freeze, so it's a little bit smaller. And then that corn we planted April 25th, it didn't suffer as much in that freeze, and it's actually, didn't seem to get slowed down by it, and it's actually taken off. We're getting a little more height on the later planted corn than the early.
Yeah, and so back to the growing conditions so far have been fairly cool. What do you expect to see in the next 2 weeks out of this corn?
So in the next 2 weeks, I really expect to see growth. We have a lot of conditions coming up. We've had nice rain, and now we're going to be moving into temperatures that are 70 to 80 degrees. I look at our forecast, we don't really ever get above 80 degrees for the next week, but we've got nice soil moisture. We're going to have some heat. That corn's going to get really get going for us.
So for some of the area back to like over to Grand Island, they received a bunch of rainfall. Some of them received like 8-9 inches. If we have a piece of ground that's flooded with corn this size, what's the implications there to that corn?
The implications can vary from not much of an issue to one where if you're underwater for 2 or more days, you can get into a serious condition. The corn essentially runs out of oxygen and dies. So it needs oxygen on the roots and things like that to keep the plant growing. If you don't have that, it's going to die on you. You're going to be looking at a replant in those areas where the water sat longer. If it just sat there 6-8 hours and then kind of moved off the field, you're in good shape. You're not looking at replant. You may have to look at what nutrients are doing, but those spots where it sits, I really get concerned at about 2 days. And then if we have warm temperature, that seems to speed up that process even faster.
Is there any concern about like soil moving down into the whorl and bringing in basically a fungus or a bacteria to cause problems later on?
It could. It causes a lot of wet conditions. We've got a lot of humidity, and that's ideal for fungal growth in a lot of cases. If the plant suffered some damage, then it does open it up to bacterial pathogens as well in some cases. So, the ones we think of like Goss's wilt and bacterial leaf streak on the bacterial side, those would be something to be on the lookout for with the wet conditions. And then your fungal diseases, I think you'll start to see those occur later, but you could be looking at maybe some Pythium or Rhizoctonia and Fusarium getting going in those plants where you've got a lot of moist conditions.
Yeah, so needless to say, we've got some variable conditions. As we look out to the west, we've got a little bit drier conditions, and actually farmers are probably going through there and doing some irrigation already to get that corn established in that eastern Colorado, far western Kansas area. Anything from that perspective for them to consider?
Really, when you're talking about irrigation, we don't have a lot or a very large root under these plants yet. So if you're in a sandy soil and it's very dry in that upper foot, certainly we need to be irrigating. If you're in a silt loam soil, you've still got fair moisture. The plant still is probably accessing water. It's not quite as critical, but definitely if you're in those sandier soils and you haven't had any of the rains that we've experienced, it's probably getting to be a critical time to start to irrigate those plants.
Okay, so again, Mark, we're out here with corn that's sitting around that V4 stage. When we're looking at what's going to happen in the next 2 weeks, as it moves into the V6 stage and that growing point moves above the soil surface. What are some things for farmers to keep in mind?
You know, you're really looking at a lot of those applications, a very busy time over the next few weeks. So if you're looking at, you know, maybe an early like V5, V6 fungicide application, the next week or two is when that's going to have to go on for a lot of the corn in Nebraska. Same with post or early post herbicide applications. And then when you start to think about those side dress fertility pieces, I know the corn looks short now. We don't have any trouble getting over it. But here in about, you know, 2 to 3 weeks, that growing point of V6 is going to move above ground. And if we continue to have good conditions, we're going to see basically that corn getting taller very rapidly. So you're going to have to get those applications done and, you know, make sure that you've got time in your operation to get it all taken care of.
All right. Well, all some very good pointers depending on where you're at in the Central Plains. For some areas too wet, other areas too dry, and we're just kind of right in the middle here at the Learning Center where things are about right. So any final thoughts, Mark?
Yeah, we've been just right. We've got good soil moisture, but really not any flooding conditions. We got stuff planted in a good time frame, so we're off, and it looks like off to a really good start. So hopefully we can keep that going throughout the growing season.
All right. Well, we want to thank you for your time, and we'll talk to you in the future about other agronomic topics from the Learning Center. Thank you.
Thanks for watching this video from the Gothenburg Water Utilization Learning Center. For more information, please call 308-537-4500.